For as long as I can remember, there's been a battle brewing between science and the Bible.
Brothers and sisters, I got a message for you today. The Bible says that God spoke and the universe popped into existence. And that's all you need to know. Do not be nonsensical, mein Liebchen. The universe came into existence, then a tiny fluctuation in the primordial quantum field erupted into all of the matter and the universe which we see today.
Whoa now, let me amend my previous statement. The battle that's been going on isn't between necessarily the Bible and science, it's between people who believe in one or the other of these things. You see, science and the Bible are not enemies. It's not an either-or kind of question.
Air or water?
Choose.
Choose? Can't I have both? Now, water, as you probably know, is made up of two gases, hydrogen and oxygen, and they're both found in the atmosphere that we breathe. But fish breathe water only because there is oxygen dissolved in the water. Seems kind of like they work together.
Matter or energy?
Choose.
We clearly see that both of these things exist. Quantum field theory says that all particles are just an energetic fluctuation within the underlying quantum field that permeates everything, even empty space. And of course, we all know that famous equation E equals mc squared, so matter and energy are kind of the same thing anyway.
Space or time?
Choose.
Time and space are both manifestations of a single universal fabric that we call
space-time.
Humans, by and large, are way too eager to choose up sides, and once they've picked a side, they're equally way too eager to demean and discredit and even destroy the other side at all costs. That's exactly what's been going on in this so-called debate between scientists and believers. Now, believe it or not, science and the Bible will get along just fine if people would just let them coexist. Now, obviously, this topic is way too big to cover in just one little YouTube video. I want to go ahead and give it a try, even though this video is barely going to scratch the surface. But I do want to scratch a little bit.
It's itchy.
So I guess the most logical place to begin would be at the beginning. We might even start just a little bit before that. The first sentence of the Bible says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." Now that's just a fancy way of saying that God created absolutely everything. The whole universe, everything that exists. Light, galaxies, stars, planets,
Neutrinos.
quarks,
Dark matter.
even space-time itself. The Bible says quite plainly that the reason there is something instead of nothing is because God made it. He made it all. Contrary to what a lot of New Age kind of religions will try to tell you, God and the universe are not the same thing. God exists outside the universe because he created it. He's the creator. The universe is a creation. Therefore, God exists outside the universe, and according to causality, he had to have existed before the universe. Even if you've never heard the term causality, you're probably familiar with the idea through another name. We also call it the law of cause and effect. Now, those two words have to happen in a specific order. The cause comes first, then the effect comes second. There's no reversing them. It's actually a pretty common sense way of thinking, but it's also one of the most important scientific principles.
Where ist mein cheeseburger? Well, I ate it. Why did you eat mein cheeseburger? Because I was hungry. This is why you are so fat.
Well, something like that anyway. In science, it's more like, why did the ball fall to the ground? 1, I released my grip on it. 2, gravity happened. And 3, it's basically the reason that you can't go back in time and change some past event. For instance, you can't go back and kill Hitler. That's kind of murdery. But if you did go back and kill Hitler, and he didn't commit all of the atrocities that we know he did, then you would have never had a reason to go back to kill him, so you never would have gone back to kill him. Therefore, he would have lived, and... wait. Obviously, this creates an impossible situation, which we call a paradox. At its core, a paradox is simply a violation of the law of causality, and you can't break that law. So, unfortunately, looks like time travel is not gonna be a thing. If you have seen Avengers Endgame, then you know that causality rears its ugly head in this movie. Now, if you want to see how the Avengers got around all this, and spoilers, they didn't use a DeLorean or a great big blue box, you should check out this video on a channel called Because Science. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Anyway, back in the real world, scientists have spent hundreds of years collecting all kinds of data, doing experiments, and making observations.
As one is apt to do.
And by combining these vast amounts of data and doing some brain-melting math, scientists have actually been able to piece together a string of cause and effect all the way back to the beginning of the universe. Well, almost. It's complicated. Now, scientists still don't know all of the answers about where the universe came from and why it looks like it does today. And we may never know. It's also interesting to note that all scientists don't necessarily agree about how to interpret all that data. Some of them have reached different conclusions about the origin of the universe. Of course, to be fair, Christians don't all agree about everything in the Bible either, so... But the best theory that science has to offer, and incidentally, it's also the theory that most scientists tend to agree is correct, goes by a name that you have undoubtedly heard before. The Big Bang is an idea that originated actually back in the early 1900s. One of the most important and well-known scientists who contributed to this idea was actually Albert Einstein, through his theories on gravity and space-time, not E=mc². That's the one that let us make atomic bombs. Instead, we're talking about his general and special theories of relativity. Now, I'm about to oversimplify things in a big way. We've made some ridiculously powerful telescopes, and they're located both on land and up in space. And we've spent a lot of time studying the light from all the stars and galaxies that we can see. And scientists have come to the conclusion that the universe is expanding. We know this because of an effect that you're probably familiar with. It's called the Doppler effect. And you've probably experienced it if you've ever had to sit at a railroad crossing and wait for a train to go by. As the train's approaching you and it blows its whistle, you hear one note, one pitch. And then as the train goes by, that pitch lowers. This exact same thing happens to light over the vast distances of interstellar or intergalactic space. And we've been able to observe pretty clearly that everything is moving away from us. Running the line of cause and effect backwards in time using math like Albert Einstein and some of these other brainiacs figured out, we can see that all of the galaxies that are currently flying apart from each other had to have originated from a single point in space.
A singularity.
That's an infinitely dense, infinitely tiny, mind-boggling mathematical point in the universe where gravity is so strong that even light can't escape from it. Now, by now, you've probably heard about this, the first picture ever taken of an actual black hole. This is the supermassive black hole located at the center of galaxy M87, and it contains about as much mass as 6.5 billion stars like our sun. Scientists believe that every black hole has a singularity at its center, But even this supermassive monster that we recently photographed isn't even a drop in the ocean compared to the singularity that created the universe. You see, the singularity that caused the Big Bang contained all of the matter and energy in our universe today. And as soon as it appeared, it erupted in an event that we now call the Big Bang. And the universe has been growing, expanding, and evolving ever since. Now, I know there are a lot of Christians out there who scoff at the notion of the Big Bang, but you really shouldn't. Let me tell you why. You may remember that earlier I mentioned that all scientists don't necessarily agree about the Big Bang. Well, there are other theories. As a matter of fact, in the 1920s and 30s, the preferred idea was something called the steady state theory. And in this, the universe was said to be eternal, meaning it didn't even have a beginning. It was just always kind of there. You might find it interesting to know that it was actually a supporter of the steady state theory that named the Big Bang theory. This was a British astronomer named Fred Hoyle, and he first used the term Big Bang in 1949. Now, a lot of the early Big Bangers took offense to the term because they thought he was insulting them. Now, later on, Hoyle said that he wasn't mocking anybody. He was just using the term to kind of illustrate the differences between the two theories. Whether Hoyle was mocking the Big Bang scientists or not, Christians should really avoid doing so. We should realize that the Big Bang theory is in agreement with the Bible. The Big Bang theory actually supports the Bible. You see, the Bible says that there was indeed a beginning. A point in time, which was the very first point in time. And before the beginning, there was nothing. There wasn't even time. And that's exactly what the Big Bang theory says as well. Now, the steady state scientists strongly objected to the idea of the Big Bang, precisely because it said there was a beginning. You see, they thought that was a biblical idea, and that scientists who believed in the Big Bang theory were importing religion into physics. They just couldn't stand that. Fred Hoyle himself said, the reason why scientists like the Big Bang is because they are overshadowed by the book of Genesis. As it turns out, we have learned a lot about space and the origins of the universe since scientists first proposed the Big Bang theory. We're actually coming up on the 50th anniversary of the first manned moon landing later this year, and that's on July 20th. Now, besides several trips to the moon and back, we've actually sent satellites to survey every planet in our solar system. We've launched ridiculously overpowered telescopes into space, which have actually discovered planets around other stars. We've landed probes on Venus and Mars and some asteroids and comets. And now we're looking very seriously at manned missions to Mars. Computers, of course, have been getting more and more powerful for decades, and they have been a huge factor in being able to study what's out there and where it all may have come from. And according to everything that we've learned, it looks like the steady state theory is out the door for good. And the Big Bang theory, or some version of it anyway, is here to stay. Now, that's pretty good news for somebody like me that believes in God, specifically the God of the Bible. Now, science can only go back so far by tracing the line of cause and effect. And even if scientists do get all the details worked out to the very first moment of time, and to be fair, they've got it worked out already to the tiniest little fraction of the very first second. Virtually all of them agree that the beginning of the universe was an event which was caused by something that science may never be able to definitively explain, simply because science is limited to what we can observe within our universe. Whatever caused the universe to pop into existence would have to be something outside of our universe, and it would have to have existed before the universe. So this would be before space or time, or space-time itself, was even a thing. Therefore, it is literally beyond the reach of science. Now, fortunately, the identity of the first cause has been known for thousands of years to anyone who has ever read Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. American astronomer and self-proclaimed agnostic Robert Jastrow made the following comment in his book entitled God and the Astronomers. At this moment, it seems as though science will never be able to raise the curtain on the mystery of creation. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. Now, obviously, once you get past the beginning, science and the Bible tend to go in different directions.
Or do they?
And that's something I'll be talking about in future videos. But for now, suffice to say that when it comes to the beginning of time, the beginning of the universe, the very first moment of creation, science and the Bible really do go hand in hand. So what's it going to be? Bible or Big Bang? Or maybe both?